If you are a migrant currently living in Trinidad and Tobago without legal immigration status, this message is for you. The government of Trinidad and Tobago has introduced a special registration process for migrants who have overstayed or entered the country illegally. The online registration process will begin from Monday 26th of January and end on Wednesday 25th of February 2026. All applicants are first required to register through the official portal at migrantregistration.gov.tt. That's migrantregistration.gov.tt. After completing the online registration, there will be a mandatory in-person processing and verification which begins at the end of February 2026. The start date for that phase will be announced through official government channels. The in-person registration will take place at the Hazley Crawford Stadium, Port of Spain, the Atto Bolden Stadium in Balmain, Couva, and the Larry Gown Stadium in Malabar, Arima, as well as the Dwight York Stadium, Bacalet, Scarborough, Tobago. Applicants will undergo a comprehensive verification process which will include vetting by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service involving fingerprinting and background checks. You will also be required to undergo basic medical screening. Upon completion of the registration process, successful applicants will be required to pay $700 for the migrant registration card. The ministry reminds undocumented migrants your participation in this exercise is essential, as failure to register during this window will result in deportation. This special registration process for migrants is your opportunity to be documented, protected, and allowed to work legally in Trinidad and Tobago for a defined period. For additional instructions, along with online application and required forms, visit the official portal at migrantregistration.gov.tt. That's migrantregistration.gov.tt. This message brought to you by the Ministry of Homeland Security and the Information Division, Office of the Prime Minister.
WESN.
Welcome. Apologies for the sound of my voice, but it was going over the weekend and Sunday didn't help. But can't necessarily take too much time off from the show. Things are happening. Hopefully you would be able to understand what I'm saying. Again, I apologize if it's not the most pleasant thing to listen to right now, but the show must go on. And speaking about shows, well, first of all, anyway, here, I'd just like to say, I find it interesting for a country within the Caribbean, and we adopt the laissez-faire attitude, you know, train time, which means, whenever. We might be a little late, there's no scene, don't kick up a fuss, it's not as serious. And yet, we speed. So many of us love to speed while we operate on a relaxed timetable. Make that make sense to me. Is it that the speeding is to compensate for the relaxed timetable? Do we know better? It's not that we want to slow things down and not necessarily rush into things. No, we're just lazy, we're late, and then we try to speed to compensate. I find it a very interesting dichotomy when you think about it. The laissez-faire island life combined with excessive speeding. Speaking of speeding, on my way here, I wasn't necessarily, driving fast. It was morning, not so much rush hour, but there are a lot of cars on the Savannah. Generally, I don't want to drive past 50 anyway. But there was a car that wanted to be like right behind my bumper, to the point where I felt as though if anything happened and I hit the brakes, I was going to get rear-ended. And you could say, well, I don't know if this changed, But there was a point in time where if you get hit from behind, you're not in fault. I'm not about that thinking, oh, well, it's not going to be my fault, it doesn't matter. I don't want any inconvenience having to go through any kind of situation, incident, what have you. I don't have time for that in the morning. And I don't want to go through the stress of having to have damage repaired, whether I have to pay for it or not. My car works, I don't want it to not work. So, my philosophy, and it has been this way for quite some time, because I did this once at night driving on the Lady Young, I'm probably going to slow down. Because if you're going to ride my bumper to the point where I'm uncomfortable, and we're not even talking about driving at 80 or 100, it's just 50, but I'm still uncomfortable because you're that close in my rearview mirror, I'm going to slow down. If I'm too slow for you, pass me. I'm not that egotistical to think, oh, you're not supposed to pass me. To hell with that. I want a reasonable distance between us. I maintain a reasonable distance between myself and the car in front of me. And sometimes cars want to cut in front of me. And in the interests of safety, I'm not going to try and fight them at that point, because we'll get into an accident. I'm going to let it go. And I'm going to allow distance to be created between me and the next car now. So it's just one of those things I don't understand. Because if you want to speed, why do you want to be so close to the car in front of you and have no margin of error to brake if anything goes wrong? What if a branch falls in the street? I'm going to brake reflexively. What if a man runs across the road? I'm going to brake reflexively. If I barely have enough time to stop, you're right behind me. You're going to have enough time to stop? And it was an SUV. So I'm pretty sure that thing ain't stopping on a dime. And it wasn't a new SUV. So I'm not entirely sure if the brakes were up to snuff or not. But speaking about shows must go on, I just wanted to get out of my system. There's a situation where apparently the judging of calypsos have come into question. Calypsos are too political, being silently and officially denied advancement into the finals. This is at the semi-finals of the Calypso Monarch competition, or Calypso Fiesta. Now, it's 40 participants from what was reported vying for 11 spots. But some of the crowd were of the opinion that some of the artists that were blanked and the songs that were blanked, they might have deserved to move on. It's a very interesting observation to make, because the art form was built on the basis of almost being like the town crier, like a herald. The orators of news and art form, and the purveyors of current events and societal opinion almost in art form. Social commentary, this was our version of it. You know, you have folk songs in some areas, you have rap music to some extent, there's social commentary into that, right? And for us it was calypso. Now, it could be correlation and not causation. You know, you see certain songs that didn't get in, they're political, therefore it must be because they're political. Maybe it's because the other songs just rang tire. The problem is, of course, art is subjective. So now the question is, do you make decisions to appeal to the masses? Because there was also controversy with the Chutney Soca Monarch finals. And there's a popular consensus that the second place entrant or contestant should be the first place, and the third place contestant should be the second place, and the person who won came out of nowhere, apparently. And it seems as though, and this is where again it's subjective, the song was not well known, so obviously it wasn't popular in the sense of having a lot of airplay and being on a lot of people's playlists and being at the forefront of people's minds of what is the hot tune this year. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad song. Sometimes songs grow on a population or grow on you You need more than one listen. The first listen might not necessarily be the best indicator to the eventual popularity of any given song. Sometimes it grabs you immediately, and sometimes it takes a while for the various perceptions to catch up to what it is they hear. It's very interesting now. We had two situations somewhat similar happen. And to what extent is there distrust now in society of people in authority, people in decision-making positions, to the point where even recreation now is going to be subject to incredible public scrutiny. That has its good and its bad. Because it's not always necessarily based on the most accurate of assessment. How does the public consensus come about to judge a situation like that? I haven't heard the songs in question, so I can't say. I will say this though. This again is another exercise where the people in charge, first of all, I get it. It's not as though they have anybody to teach you how to do this, but managing the expectations of your consumers, or in this case, your patrons / audience, is important. How do you do that is also subjective. There's no textbook way on how to do it. It's going to vary by circumstances, including the culture of the population, what is the general worldview or perception of the population at the time, the social trends and norms, you know, what's just popular. And all of that could change. What works in one generation might not work in another generation. But this is one of those things where I hope the people in charge don't think, well, we gave you our explanation, and if you don't like it, you could suck salt. I don't think that's going to work in the long run. Just ask Minister Alexander. More on that later. Because speaking about perception, because part of it is you might perceive a wrong, you might misidentify a wrong, and then you could misidentify a solution. There's a similar situation, it's not quite the same, where I believe at the end of the day, Archbishop Gordon is misidentifying the solution at the very least. You could debate if he misidentified the wrong or not, and I think your mileage may vary depending on your stance and your perception of whatever given situation. And granted, this is probably not what a good Catholic boy is supposed to be saying, but given the fact that I am not necessarily disciplined or in attendance Catholic, let's put it that way. Also, I do feel as though at the end of the day, one, I have to speak more than just for my religion, and two, religion is a very sticky thing. It is based on individual beliefs. And while the positive values of a religion that generally are going to be universal, I have no issue with a society basing its morality, the foundation of its ethics, on those universal things that are positive. Like, thou shalt not kill. That's basically a universal given. Murders are wrong, so one of the building blocks of modern society is to outlaw murder, right? Yes, you could defend yourself. That's generally speaking allowed throughout multiple jurisdictions, but you can't outright go to kill somebody if you have some sort of difference of opinion with them. So now the question is that the Archbishop brings to the forefront, how far is too far? He says it's too far, but now we have to ask a question. Is it too far because he's a Christian and he disagrees with it on those grounds? That alone is not enough. In a society where there's freedom of religion, unfortunately, that alone is not enough. One religious perspective is not enough to dictate what the rules of an entire society of multiple ethnicities, religions, and cultures should be. Because freedom of religion means that people are free to disagree with him and go a different direction. Whether he likes it, I like it, you like it, or not. freedom of religion allows for that. Freedom of religion is the backstop and foundation that allows us to practice our own religions, whatever it may be, Christian, Hindu, Muslim, if we have any Jews, Buddhists, etc., etc. And that is something that I think should be held sacrosanct. The rights of other people to practice their religions must be enforced by those who practice something different in order to ensure that all of us can practice what we believe, no matter how different it is. Now, is the Archbishop speaking about Trinbagonian society? Maybe we could get into a debate there. On what grounds did the situation go too far? Because apparently, one mass band is, well, first of all, they are of the practice of providing goodies and a little goodie bag when you go to the all-inclusive thing. Because, these days, you're not just paying for your costume. You're getting a bag, you're getting a water bottle, you're getting a coffee mug, you're getting some shampoo bottles and hand sanitizer and slippers and all kind of things. Maybe sunglasses. And apparently now, for one band, dildos or female sex toys. I don't know exactly what it is. I saw a picture of I believe, a member of the organization holding up one of the items. It didn't look like a dildo to me, so I don't know. I didn't really look too far into that. It doesn't matter to me what it is. The point is, the Archbishop believes that a carnival band is giving out free sex toys in part of its goodie bag, of its package, with its costume for Carnival Monday and Tuesday, and that has gone too far for him. So I asked the question, is it too far for the rest of you? But then now I also ask the question, why does it matter? Not that I think we should just not look at the situation, not talk about the situation, and not ask ourselves if we should do something about the situation, but rather we should also ask ourselves, what exactly do we want to accomplish? What exactly are we trying to prevent? What exactly do we want? Because I think the Archbishop is misidentifying the problem. The problem is a carnival band, as he sees it. A carnival band is giving out sex toys. Oh, how bad that is. And my issue is, that's not the problem. The problem is, in our society, now we have reached the point where a carnival band thinks that the public, or rather, not the public, not the general public, their customer base will be appreciative of this sort of item as part of the package. And then, if you put it that way, to what degree is that an actual problem that society needs to bother itself to try to solve? It doesn't necessarily say anything about the use of said toy or what it means. What exactly does it mean to the moral fabric of giving it out? At the end of the day, adults should be free to be adults. Now, ironically, I think the legality of sex toys in TNT is very interesting, because there was a situation not too long ago where customs would confiscate things described as too lewd. And that description is basically even more subjective than who should be winning these calypso and soca, chutney soca monarch competitions. What is too lewd? What is a sex toy that's too lewd, apparently? Some of them get confiscated, not all of them. But whatever the gray area is, I am not an expert. I have not tried to import such things, nor buy such things, nor do I know someone that has done it. So I have no idea. To what degree now, as a society, should we look at adults using sex toys as an issue? Now, I'm fairly certain that these packages generally are not the kind of thing that young people that are minors would engage in. Maybe some minors that are 16, 17, adults might buy packages in those bands for them. I don't know. And I don't know what other criteria there are for these things. But again, is this something that society needs to solve? Because I believe the Archbishop is calling for potentially government intervention. And I would say that might be a little bit too far. Because what are you asking to regulate? We are not asking the regulation of public sex acts. Not everything you get is meant to be used during Carnival. I don't know if the Archbishop is of that opinion. I'm fairly certain, and I could be wrong, if people start to use these things out on the road, Carnival Monday and Tuesday, that's a whole other kettle of fish. And, you know, if that's against the law, then good luck with that. Indecent exposure in a public place, blah, 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 blah. You know, at the end of the day, you do kind of have to wear some minimal coverage of the human body. And granted, I would argue that it's a more relevant issue on wider society to speak about those situations where the coverage of carnival costumes are so minimalistic. It's not about what's left to the imagination, but rather the efforts to cover certain parts of the anatomy are so minuscule to be near non-existent, depending on if body paint isn't actually accompanied with covering of the most minimal kind. That's a different question, right? Because that is a group activity, a public space, you know, who would be there, who would be part of it, what it means, etc., etc. But to say that, all right, there's this issue with society and it's contributing to hedonism. That society needs to step in. Dare I ask, that basically means government is regulating the availability and distribution of any sort of items like this. Is this something that we want our government to be bothered with? Because if your concern is that carnival is becoming more hedonistic, at the very least, the problem is not the distribution of these items, but the willingness of the population to accept it. So then the real issue is not to try to regulate it or ban it, but ask yourself, what is it about the individuals who want this apparently, who will respond positively to this, and whose ethical and moral judgment seems to be very different to your own? And if that's an issue that you think is alarming as a religion, then you must ask yourself, what can we do to change society and its acceptance of tolerance of what the church finds as hedonistic? Not telling government it must be regulated. Because, again, if it was a public activity, I'm pretty sure there's laws on the books for that already. Giving out the items to be used in private dwellings, I don't think the government could touch that. But more importantly, if you try to ban it or block it, you will just have people do what they do best, find a way to circumvent it, especially if they do not agree with it. And that's why I believe he's misidentifying the solution, because he's not actually solving the problem as he sees it. The problem as he sees it is society is going down a path. This is merely the latest step. You can't stop it by trying to stop the latest step. You have to stop it at the root cause, which is how people view society, what people view as acceptable in society. And if you fail, which you very well just might, especially over time, perhaps that might be an indicator, either one, maybe you were mistaken, or two, it's just a battle you can't win. Humans will human, they will do what they want to do. There are certain universal truths that we can all agree to. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not rob, thou shalt not engage with acts with another person's spouse. Pretty sure thou shalt not use sex toys is not there on that list. So now, it's a judgment call. You're not going to win hearts and minds with a heavy-handed approach that isn't going to try to, at the very least, reason with society. Long-term engagement, not short-term regulations. Those are plasters, those are patches. Those aren't going to do anything if people don't agree. And how are you going to enforce it? Remember, the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister is not in their bedrooms, neither are the police. Good luck with that. At the end of the day, I guess the members of the Ban tribe says it best. We deliver an experience, and if that experience occasionally comes with a cheeky surprise that keeps people smiling and talking, well, that's very much on brand for us. The fact of the matter is, by taking such a stance that the Archbishop has taken, he might have made the situation blow up, but not in the way that he expected. How many people now, in defiance, will not just appreciate and want such a thing, but demand such a thing be more widespread in society? Psychology is a hell of a thing. Let's hit the pause button there. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll continue on with conversations. Hopefully, we should have the media ambassador as well, as we didn't have a show yesterday. But we'll see if he could make it today. He did indicate that he should be able to, but we'll see when we return after this. Stay tuned.
Previously on Cover Star.
Just keeping on with my flow.
We met the voices, and we met our first two panels of judges. Episode 1, Vonette Bickford and myself, Hannah Abdul. Episode 2, Candice Alcantara and the piano girl Johanna. And shout out to our judges for tonight's episode, Jarrell Forbes, Luke Samerson, and Vonette is back. Over the last 2 episodes, we got into the covers, and the judges looked, listened, and scored. 2 contestants were unable to perform due to illness. They did not score, and they were out of the running. This is Cover Star, where music history meets its next voice.
On WESN, the content capital.
As you come in. Long time I see you. This station complete. Ready for children party. Mommy! Jay, you can't go nowhere with these children. And you know you can't depend on Kevin neither Stephen to see about them. Yeah, total waste. So I supposed to stay home whole time? Jada is 12. She could see about that. You just leave Jada to see about Kia and Kayla. I thought it was your mother or your sister. Who? Them always busy. Jada could handle that. She cooking and cleaning a long time. And the next 2 better know what time it is. It's only me, you know. I will talk to my mother. She just home these days. She will make sure the children okay. Alright. Let me see the moves for later.
Before you ramage, make sure the children okay. Call 996 to report all child abuse now. A message from the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
I will back here and talk about the WSN, the content capital. If my voice sounds a little funny at times, although it's sounding better now, didn't start off that way, but if it sounds funny at times, I apologize. Once again, I got sick before the end of last week, and then Sunday happened. Not entirely sure, because I didn't go to any fests. I didn't go to any parties. WSN, we did have a Super Bowl watch party at Murray's on Macrappa Road. I actually very much recommend the spot. I don't necessarily go to bars much, but it is a place that I would like to go because the food actually tastes pretty good. It was not expensive. Not just for bar food. The food actually tastes pretty good. Was not expensive, just in general. The fact that it was in a bar, that's the kind of thing that I would like. Not just some really crappy tasting stuff that you get in certain other establishments that's overpriced and not necessarily appealing. This is pretty good. It's a place where my friends and I would have lined maybe, 10 years ago when the economy is better and we weren't necessarily so strapped for cash. Now, times are tough, but hey, I might still try and figure out a way to get myself back at Murray's. But that's just, they didn't ask for it. I just wanted to mention it. Hopefully the voice holds up for the rest of the show. That said, I didn't want people to think I was fetting over the weekend and being irresponsible with my voice. But with that said, let's go now into the daily review. All right, so the first thing I wanted to get to today, it might be the only thing before we welcome the media ambassador, is the situation with the ferry service, which has taken a slight turn because I initially was willing to take the explanation from the Minister of Works, Jerlene John, and what she had to say over the situation at face value. And for the most part, I don't think she said necessarily anything wrong for the most part. Now, the Tobago Hotel Association, they have issues with the situation going with the inter-island ferry service and the cargo ferry specifically. And for the last decade, it has not been smooth sailings. Now, it's not as though there was one situation that caused it, right? There were situations with the ferry and then the cargo boat. At the time when the PNM came into office, that was separate to the passenger ferries. It had its own separate issue. The government had to replace the ferry service because I can't remember if it was the board of the port that potentially mismanaged the situation with the cargo boat or the incoming government. But then it took them some time to stabilize that. And for whatever reason, they never seem to have like a long period of stability with regards to the cargo ferry. The Cargo Star might be one of the longer periods of stability, but of course, as the contract came to its conclusion, the government of the day, the current administration, wanted to try to appease the demand for greater capacity, but not necessarily provide two boats. Smaller boats would have potentially been, have its benefits with regards to redundancy. If one goes down, you still have the other one. Might not have been as economical as one big boat like the MV Blue Wave Harmony, which is bigger than the Cargo Star, has more facilities or perks than the Cargo Star. Now, it's come out that the Hotel Association has so far certain things that are on their radar. Seemingly, it's no longer as big as a strain. Supplies have increased, but not necessarily the heavy supplies like with regards to the construction sector, which for hotels in Tobago, that is a big deal because maintenance at times requires heavy materials, not just a little bit of paint, So particularly when you're dealing with things like sea blast, lumber, on top of other things, any kind of woodworking, railing, etc., tends to need to be replaced. Not very quickly, but if you have a lot of wood railings and decks and staircases, it could seem as though you're having to replace one after another. And this is just on the western side, much less on the eastern side, where the sea blast is even worse, where the winds are even stronger. Now, the issue with the cargo ferry in particular, this cargo ferry, there was a report with regards to Blue Wave Harmony having issues that various foreign authorities had to deal with or force the owners to deal with. And it seems as though the minister's come out to say, listen, don't worry about that. The reporting is a lot of unnecessary drama, because at the end of the day, the vessel has been brought up to standard, and that's how it's been allowed to operate or to continue to operate. And this was backed up, I believe, by one attorney, Nairi Afonso, if I'm correct. I just want to make sure I get your correct name. Basically saying that no, it's highly doubtful that the U.S. Coast Guard of all people would release a boat like this and allow it to continue to operate if it was not up to scratch. But the thing is, though, there are questions in regards to the damage to the boat. Now, the boat itself got damaged when it was still on sea trials, right? And one of the issues is, at least it has been observed, or the official version of events have been questioned, because exactly how bad were the waters within the bay where the port for Scarborough is located? Generally speaking, those aren't going to be rough waters. Those aren't going to be rough seas. Now, remember, I believe around the same time, I stand to be corrected, there was also an issue with the TNT Spirit having difficulty docking. So perhaps it just was one of those freak weather events where, you know what, the winds were coming in a different direction, and you know, waves and the currents were moving in an unexpected way. Now the question is, to what extent was this accident just because it was a weather pattern that is very unexpected and does not occur very often, if rarely at all? It was more an exception than a norm, and that basically caused what seems to be some sort of collision between the Blue Wave Harmony and, well, the dock, the pier, the berth. So it hit something physical close to the waterline, because when you look at the photos, the gash seems to be in the area with the red paint, not with the upper part of the hull. And of course, now the question is, in order to repair that, it's not just the hole, but what other structural damage that might have occurred behind, to what extent it needs to go into dry dock and go under considerable expense and taking a not insignificant amount of time to be fixed, in which case the supplies on Tobago will be operating in a less than optimal situation. I heard they brought out another barge. It didn't necessarily, if my memory serves correct, work out the first time. I don't know how well it's going to work out the second time, especially if you have an issue with rough seas. Because if the waters at the port were too rough for the Spirit to dock, or for the Blue Wave to safely moor alongside a pier, I don't know how a barge is going to make it. So this is the only thing. The reports on Blue Wave Harmony maybe not being up to standard seems to be overblown, based on what certain stakeholders have said. Yes, Nari Alfonso, who is reported as a specialist marine and commercial attorney at law, she reviewed the vessel history report that I believe the newspaper based its report on, saying that, look, the past detention, the fear that the past detention of the vessel means that it's unsafe now. She argued that there's stronger evidence is what the ship is certified to do at present and what recent inspections show, and there are valid certificates and recent inspections to indicate that it complied and it fixed whatever the issues were in the past. So now, I guess the real question is there any concern that this could happen again? Do you believe that it could happen again or not? And to what extent, perhaps, was it just the lack of proficiency or knowledge of the people looking to guide the ship to the port? Whatever the breakdown in the chain of command, if the master of the boat should have set abort, if the pilot or whoever, was right to continue, if the weather patterns were a freak situation, or if it was just the regular currents, the regular weather patterns, which, generally speaking, in the port is not much, if anything. We don't know. right? This is just another one of those things where you have to manage expectations of the population. And now on some level, depending on how long this boat is down, will it be brought up to be fit for purpose again? It's not as though you could just say, well, we can't wait for this boat, we'll get another boat. The time it takes to get another boat, this boat potentially will be fixed. Of course, there are issues with our own ship repair dry dock facilities. Do we have anybody that could potentially repair a ship like this in country, or does it have to go? I don't know if it could go elsewhere, to be honest, because then it might need a temporary fix in order to be seaworthy to go elsewhere if it has to get more long-term repairs. This is one of those things where Tobago was already kind of behind because there was a gap between when the Cabo Star was servicing the ferry route between the two islands and when the Blue Wave Harmony came in. So in theory, things would have been fine. Tobago probably could have just waited out the gap. I believe it would have around the tune of 2 weeks, give or take, 10 days or 2 weeks, something like that. I could be wrong, but I believe Tobago has shown at times when there were disruptions to the cargo ferry service, they know how to handle that now, right? With the existing alternative resources, the alternative vessels. The Spirit potentially having issues does not help the situation. But my concern is, and I am not necessarily someone with all the information, so this is not an informed opinion, this is speculative on my part. My concern is whatever margin of error that was there to absorb the lack of a cargo vessel was potentially used up in that gap between contracts. Because the Blue Wave Harmony hasn't actually been approved and proceeded on actual commercial shipping trips yet. It didn't actually take, as far as I'm aware, any cargo. It was still undergoing sea trials before assuming actual duty on the inter-island cargo ferry route. So all this time, Tobago has been having to deal with, from when the Cabo Star left till now and in the near future, not having a cargo ferry. And just that capacity alone, you could compensate on the APT James and the Buckle Reef and the Galleon's Passage and the TNT Spirit. You could try to compensate with that. Even if the Spirit was there, it's just not the same. Because at the end of the day, you would have had the capacity of those ships anyway. Now you're basically trying to prioritize what little you can with a fixed set of resources that did not increase when the Blue Wave Harmony was put down with or regulated to the sidelines because of this accident. So this is not a long-term solution. That's why we have a cargo ferry in the first place. Hopefully the timing of it, it seems as though the Hotel Association has said, okay, with regards to things like food and drinks and stuff like that, we're managing so far, things are going okay. The report of supermarket shelves being empty, it's not that bad. And to be honest, even when the cargo ferry is operating, there are times when certain shelves do go empty because the logistical supply distribution chains, it's a little bit more complicated and not necessarily always going to be perfect when it's always at the tail end of a cargo ship trip. So there have been times on the cargo ferry and everything is working and stuff just runs out because people on the island buy it out and they didn't replace it in time. That could happen. So supermarket shelves being bare isn't always the most accurate indicator that the cargo ferry's problems having a detrimental effect on the island directly. What it does, however, mean at the very least is, them shortages that you might periodically have of a minor product here or there, it's going to be compounded by the cargo ferry going out. So a lot of people, I think, at least those who care about the situation, are kind of nervous. You know, this doesn't bode well when the first outing of the ship, seemingly, it's got some, I don't know, bad luck. Hopefully this is not a sign of things to come. But let's move on to the next topic. I'll try and be quick with this. Again, I know it's something that I've probably spoken about. Some people will say ad nauseum, but you will forgive me But I don't mind that it's ad nauseum. There are certain things that we shouldn't forget. I do bring up the marital situation. I do bring up the Brent Thomas situation. Sometimes I forget. I'm sure there's situations that I forget about. The Paris situation, the AV drilling situation, the Auditor General situation. All of these things happen. Even the arrest of Ayla, as much as I didn't like as commissioner, that is not something that I view as positively. She should have, her time in office should have been up because of the proper way, not this Nancy way. That said, the shooting of Mr. Samaru, I feel as though the Minister of Homeland Security, there's just something he doesn't get. I might not necessarily identify what it is exactly, but something's not adding up in this situation. 2 plus 2 ain't equaling 4. We're being sold 2 plus 2 equals 3.5, and I have an issue with it. Now, first of all, the family, they took an issue with regards to the police presence during Mr. Samaru's funeral. Apparently, the aunt of Joshua Samaru, she said while she understands the police have a job to do, they felt some discomfort with the police presence. I don't know if anyone's wondering why they would feel discomfort at the presence of an institution that seemingly, based on the visuals, murdered her nephew. That's, I think, one conclusion that can be drawn. Perhaps the family draws that conclusion, and you would understand why they don't like the sight of police officers there. My thing is, okay, they might have a job to do. Apparently, it's not uncommon for police officers to be at the presence of a funeral of someone who has been killed by police shooting. But I would have thought, and maybe I'm wrong, that's generally because maybe the person involved, the deceased might have been involved in some sort of illegal activity. Because it seemed as though there were more police than just to show remorse. And the thing is, we have yet to necessarily hear what Mr. Samaru has done wrong, what he may or may not have been involved in, why he was a person of interest for the police, and why is the family's funeral, including following them to the crematorium, something that interests a police presence, which I don't know if it was 2 police officers or more than that. But now to the minister's words. This is the quote. If you have a problem with the legal fraternity, who do you go to? Are they not lawyers? If you're dealing with the doctors, who do you go to if you have a problem with the doctors? If you're dealing with the teachers, who do you go to? This is an analogy. It is an analogy that is either a stupid analogy or one that completely misses the boat, misses the mark, in the sense that he seemingly doesn't have a clue about what it is that he's facing. Because look at the analogy, look at the examples he gives. Because I want to ask, if I have an issue with a lawyer, if you have an issue with a lawyer, are you going to ask members of the practice of the legal firm that he works at to investigate him? Or are you going to go to the law association? Or to the greater, wider authorities? But whoever you go to, potentially police, whoever you go to, they'll be independent of his private interests, of his direct and immediate interests, of the interests of any institution upon which he is a member of, who have a vested interest in protecting him. If there is a situation with a doctor in a private institution or a public health institution, are you going to ask that institution to investigate him? They might say they're doing an investigation, depending on their track record. Some people might not believe them. And ultimately, especially if it's criminal, you might want independent verification. A criminal investigation by the police. Because the police are not the doctors, the police are not the hospital, especially if it's an institution upon which they have a vested interest to protect such individual. For a private hospital, it's their profits. For a public hospital, it's to ensure that they don't lose doctors. If they hang doctors out to dry, that's a good way to lose doctors in their employ. Now the question is, do they know how to balance the need to defend doctors from frivolous accusations as opposed to not protecting doctors who legitimately did the wrong thing and allowing the process to determine who they are? But the point is, you don't have doctors of the same institution who have some sort of interest in defending this person, defend them. You don't have lawyers of the same institution, doctors of the same institution investigating each other. You get a third party. That's why in business, at certain levels, you have independent auditors. That's such a common held practice. Even the state does it. You don't have people investigate themselves and then want to say, look how transparent we are. That is not the norm, because the legal fraternity is not an individual institution. The legal fraternity is made up of individual practitioners, some of whom may join together into a partnership or a law firm, some of whom may work for a corporate or public institution, but there is no Trinidad and Tobago legal service under which all lawyers work under. So to compare that situation to the TPS means that either you don't understand or you are willfully ignorant. Because the police service, there is no other police service. That would be an easy way, not necessarily a good way, but an easy way to settle it. Have the other investigative bureau look into the police service. Because at the end of the day, it's not just what should be best practice. Arguably, in terms of accountability and transparency, the easiest thing is to have a third party investigate the situation. But forget that, because that doesn't always work out perfectly. The situation with the TTPS is so bad. It is unreasonable to tell people, trust in us to investigate ourselves. That is better than someone else doing it for us. Why? That means that the minister does not appreciate the situation that the service is in. Does not appreciate the concerns of the citizens about the service he once served in. Does not appreciate the questions that the public has over the practices of the service, that we need to be in a healthier situation because they are the main investigative body in this country. They unintentionally or intentionally have a monopoly on major aspects of crime fighting. We cannot afford the public to have these kinds of questions and to have this low level of trust. And saying things like this, where you're making apples to oranges comparisons that don't make sense, is the epitome of foolishness. It is not a police fraternity where each officer is an independent individual who does not answer to the superiors, who does not work in joint units, who doesn't have a shared hierarchy. There's no actual formal shared hierarchy of the law fraternity. The law association cannot tell lawyers what to do and micromanage how they handle their business. Which is funny, because when it comes to body cameras, the police service operates like a police fraternity, where senior officers suggest that body cameras be worn, not order, not mandate. So maybe, I don't know if that's where the Minister of Homeland Security was trying to make the analogy, but I'm fairly certain that's not how it works. So if the government cannot investigate its own finances, if corporate TNT and even smaller businesses cannot audit themselves, maybe for things like police shootings, at the current level of trust and confidence, you would, at the very least, say something to show a better appreciation with regards to where the public concerns are, at the very least. Because right now it sounds like if you don't understand why it is the public are saying what they're saying, and then you're mad at the public because you lack the ability to understand. Ain't that something? Let's take a break. When we'll be back, we'll shift gears with the media ambassadors. Stay tuned.
Come in. Long time I see you. This station complete. Ready for children party. Mommy! Jay, you can't go nowhere with these children. And you know you can't depend on Kevin neither Steven to see about them. Yeah, total waste. So I supposed to stay home the whole time? Jada is 12. She could see about them. You just leave Jada to see about Kia and Kayla. I thought it's your mother or your sister. Who? Them always busy. Jada could handle that. She cooking and cleaning a long time. And the next two better know what time it is. It's only me, you know. I will talk to my mother. She just home these days. She will make sure the children okay. Alright. Let me see the moves for later.
Before you ramage, make sure the children okay. Call 996 to report all child abuse now. A message from the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago.
Don't stop.
Previously on Cover Star,
Just keeping on with my flow.
we met the voices and we met our first two panels of judges. Episode 1, Vonette Bigford and myself, Hannah Abdul. Episode 2, Candice Alcantara and the piano girl Johanna. And shout out to our judges for tonight's episode, Jarrell Forbes, Luke Samerson, and Vonette is back. Over the last two episodes, we got into the covers and the judges looked, listened, and scored. Two contestants were unable to perform due to illness. They did not score and they were out of the running. This is Cover Star, where music history meets its next voice.
On WESN, the content capital.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, coming soon to WESN Content Capital.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really
respond to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I would ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
SM Group International Limited, your solutions partner for the latest innovations, brands, and competent staff to meet your needs. We provide products and services in the following divisions: executive services, event rental and services, power and heavy equipment, construction and property management, food and beverage, aggregate and sales and distribution. Check out more on our products and services at www.smgrouptt.com. Contact us at 221-7445 or email at info@smgrouptt.com. We are SM Group International, your solutions partner.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title, it's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really
respond to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
I'm back here talking about the WESN Content Capital, and just so my guest knows, apologies for my voice if it sounds a little gravelly. I did not go to any fetting. I was not in the gridlock traffic on, I guess it was Sunday.
Yeah.
But joining me now, because look, this is the last chance that the police, the last week before Carnival itself, so anything pertinent that they need to get out there, it has to be now, at least on Talking Point and WESN. And I would advise all those who listen to send those messages out. We have Media Ambassador Christopher Arun, acting SP Arun.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sean. Thanks for having me here today. Good day to you, your viewers, and your colleagues. We just wanted to remind members of the public of the safety measures in place for Carnival. So we have, of course, the no glass bottles would be allowed in the city and around Carnival events. We would, in terms of masqueraders and the vehicles that are being used for conveying music equipment and whatnot and other items, you know, you have to watch the safety of the vehicle in terms of the electric lines. So we want persons to be aware of that. And also the masqueraders and spectators, the public on whole, when they are around these vehicles. I remember last year we were doing a patrol in Port of Spain, and a foreigner, she and a few others, they got their foot run over by the music truck. And we had to call an ambulance, and you know, with the masqueraders and whatnot, the ambulance took a very good while to reach to her, and we had to send her in another vehicle, an emergency vehicle, to the hospital. So we want masqueraders and members of the public to be very careful in and around these music trucks, these vehicles that convey items. You know, they don't just convey music trucks, music. They convey alcoholic beverages, they convey the toilets and whatnot. So we want that, and then we have situations where people, again, with this consumption of alcohol and drugs, we have a lot of persons being subjected to being victims, being, they may find themselves not knowing exactly where they are, and they're by themselves, and they can become victims. We want persons to be very careful in how they consume these alcoholic. I know it's a time to be free and lime and relax and whatnot, but you have to understand that situation, especially what we saw over the weekend here with the last fete in the West. I remember I was myself and my colleague were leaving Port of Spain around midday, and we ended up seeing an accident on the Beetham Highway. Of course, the vehicle was being driven by one of the persons that attended that event, and it seemed that the accident halted the flow of traffic almost totally on the Beetham Highway. And the vehicle spun out of control and hit a lamppost. The lamppost bent almost across the roadway. So we want persons to be very careful on how they consume their alcoholic beverages, including with whatever drugs they might take, and how they transport themselves on the government roadway.
Well, one of the things that came out this Sunday, that fete at the heliport in Chaguaramas, 17,000 people. There were apparently multiple accidents.
Yeah, there was a lot of
that
accidents.
caused more delays. And, you know, there's not a lot of room to maneuver on that single lane stretch.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things, now, some people have come out to say, it could have been Gary Griffith, I can't remember exactly. Well, we've had 20,000 people in Chaguaramas before, but I think the examples he was pointing to was a case of multiple events where, depending on the situation, and I would hope if the fete promoters don't do this, the authorities consider this, you would stagger the end time so that it's not all 20,000 at once, because that compounds it. But the flip side to that is, and I think this is where you take it, you know, now you take the blame from the authorities and the fete promoters. In theory, you have 20,000 people in Chaguaramas, right? So in theory, you can't have 17,000. And I think one of the things that the police pointed to was, look, you had people driving irresponsibly, they were impatient, they wanted to bypass the traffic, which I assume meant going on the other lane, which I've seen before, right? And then causing an accident, which makes the situation worse. I'm basically saying, this is why we can't have nice things, because people want to be irresponsible, right? And then you can't, listen, it's one thing to blame the police if the traffic plan didn't work and, you know, it just took a long time for cars to get out. But when someone is potentially drunk driving and causing an accident that blocks the roadway, I don't know, at that point, I think that's a drunk driver problem.
Well, it goes beyond that as well, because what we observed at that location is that there were patrons staggered all over the roadway, on the side of the road, on the grass, knocked out. I mean, it might be fun, I don't know, but why would you put this stuff?
I think it's fun up until the point that you are on the roadway, right? You have a lot of fun.
Yeah. So we had a number of pedestrians to deal with. So our hands were full dealing with these patrons, dealing with the traffic.
Yes, because there was a report where it seemed as though the police presence lessened. But I would imagine between accidents and other things, it's not a lesson. It just weren't enough. You probably need like half the police service to line the entire, was that road? The Western Main Road, just to line it, because that's not a short distance when you think about it.
Exactly, and we need people to adhere to self-control, the laws and whatnot, and take care of yourselves.
I do think, because now, look, we can't have nice things. So now, as much as I just went on a whole spiel about my disagreements with the minister, when he says we can't do this next year, I'm like, that's not unreasonable for him to say. That's very reasonable, because I think now this brought up not necessarily the worst case scenario, but you could kind of now see the potential of it's not just inconveniencing people. Now, what if there were medical emergencies?
Yeah, exactly.
How would this have been dealt with, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it's not so much that it's guaranteed to be this bad every year. It's just that, can you take that chance?
Right. So yeah. So and then we also had patrons using boats to enter and exit the area.
To me, that would seem brilliant. Assuming nothing went wrong on the boats.
We had persons parking in Port of Spain, taking a boat to the western area, and then back out.
Because I would think for something like this with a single access road, because when there's North Coast Jazz, most of the people come in by shuttles.
Serious.
Right? Bus shuttles, of course.
Right.
But in anything in Chaguaramas, you could have bus shuttles and water shuttles. And in my mind, I'm like, probably should, you know, restrict heavily patrons driving to the venue in that situation, in my opinion. I could be wrong, because while some of the residents in the area didn't have an issue with it, there's also that consideration of, well, what if someone, an old person, a young person, just had a medical emergency in Carnage? What are you going to do when traffic is at a gridlock?
Yeah, and then, well, one of the things they might have to actually do is look at the promoter may have to pay for maybe helicopter services to have persons with medical emergencies attending the fetes and whatnot to be flown in and out of the area.
I mean, now technically, as much as people might not want to hear this, I would imagine stuff like that usually will be borne by the state,
right?
Because they would have that facility already available. But that's a very expensive option, and we don't use for any and everything.
And then you might have emergency vessels like boats that could.
Yeah, because the other thing is, for the helicopters to be doing that, that means that if someone now in the past in Tobago, you would need medical airlift, right? Maybe not so much now that you have these hospitals in Scarborough, but the point is, if it's trying to deal with the situation in Carnage, potentially you don't have it available for something else. Like say there's a medical emergency somewhere on the northern range or somewhere in the bush where a hunter or a farmer or someone that went on a hike. We had a young lady drown because they weren't able to save her from the rising waters. You know, like to what extent we only have so much rescue resources to go around.
Right. Well, I mean, the Coast Guard should have been around there. So we also saw incidents where persons would be parking their vehicles along the Western Main Road and partying. So they stopped the partying. So it hindered the traffic from in and out. And this is where the officers who were on duty, they were minimized. So their efforts were minimized because of all the other issues that they had to deal with along that Western Main Road. And if we get persons that adhere to the laws, you're parking indiscriminately, you're stopping the party, you can't find a driver. If we were to employ all these traffic accessibilities like the wrecker, bringing in the wrecker and wrecking person's vehicle, you know, they claim victimization, but these are things that could be put in place to assist with the movement of traffic, and persons should adhere to that. But you don't want persons to be drunk and driving. You understand? So this is all the thing. We need persons to understand the position. If you're a designated driver, be the designated driver. You cannot, if you don't have a designated driver, don't jump in the vehicle and leave. And this is what we saw over that weekend there. We saw persons drinking and driving and causing the accidents and causing a hindrance to traffic.
I mean, forget the wrecking. To me, the obvious one would be if we just started arresting people for drinking and driving. You might not have enough room and would have caused further compounded the traffic jam. Because where are you going to do it? I guess next to West Mall? Like you'll have to wait for them to hit the roundabout where you might have enough room to allow cars to go past. Like just the sheer 17,000 people. And I don't know about you, but I won't be surprised if there weren't that many designated drivers.
No, there wasn't much.
So now there is something that, before we go on, I want to get to this in case we forget. There's something that you gave us, a public notice for applications for passes. Right? Now, one of the most important things is the applications, they have to be submitted no later than Thursday, 12th of February. So this Thursday is the 11th hour final cutoff period to try to get this done for those that believe they need it. And I think for those that don't get it, then you need to be. So exactly what is the pass for, and what does it mean for those of us who don't or won't have any passes?
Well, based on your position or maybe a residential location, you will need a pass to get in and out of Port of Spain and these areas that have events, so that the police officers would recognize the pass and allow you to come through a barrier, hopefully not through the crowd, and to get to your home or your place of work. So if you're a nurse, a doctor, your emergency staff, even yourself who's a journalist and need to get to work.
The passes because the studio has applied for passes before. I haven't sought out because I generally am not working during Monday and Tuesday, so I didn't bother to get. But any pass though, I don't remember any pass. I can't remember if it was Monday or Tuesday. I drove from my home to, I believe, Digger Martin. Could have been Sunday. No, it was definitely Monday or Tuesday because the people are in full costume. But this isn't the past, so there was no Monday way. It was costume. I drove past the Roxy roundabout. There were masqueraders all over. I wasn't like separate from the crowd. I was through the crowd. There were other cars through the crowd. So for those like me who haven't necessarily tried to do it, because I was maybe almost 20 years ago. For those of us who haven't tried to drive around Port of Spain in a long time, You know, it's more restricted now. Yeah. Because also I remember Monday morning we would go to our family's house, in Woodbrook, right? You know, for the day, and then go home, and then Tuesday we would do the same thing. Right. It's more restricted now, is that correct?
Yeah, correct, yeah. So it's very difficult to get in and around Port of Spain, so you need the passes. I spoke to the assistant commissioner in charge of the passes, and he would be working like right through to ensure that, because he has to sign these passes and whatnot. So he would be available to ensure that persons who apply for the passes get the passes.
And if you don't have your pass,
it'll be very difficult for you to get around Port of Spain.
Basically, folks, if you don't have the pass and you have some kind of job that you need to get to, I guess the safest thing to say is tough luck, because I don't know to what extent you could reasonably expect the police to, for all the people who don't have a pass that claim that it's necessary for them to drive on. That's not something that I would necessarily want the police to just, because if you just are willing to accept the story and let people through without a pass, that's generally how security breaks down, and then what's the point of the pass in the first place.
Yeah, we don't want vehicles unnecessarily going through crowds and in restricted areas, because it would cause some kind of accident or incident where persons could be become injured and whatnot. So it's a matter of safety. So we want to minimize the movement of vehicles through crowds and restricted areas.
But also, I guess you don't want to repeat of what happened this Sunday to happen somewhere.
Right.
Carnival Monday or Tuesday. Because imagine now if some side streets in Woodbrook or Port of Spain, right? Some narrow street where you have a band now turning in and some cars just there. Who knows, maybe they even parked somewhere they weren't supposed to park, and now traffic is stuck. On top of the fact that, hey, if people are going to be driving drunk, leaving a fete, they might be driving drunk during Carnival itself, especially when they're going home. And if they parked in the middle of town, in the middle of activities on the way home now, that might not be the best recipe.
Yeah, exactly. And it might be very difficult for you to leave Port of Spain if you're caught up in the in a restricted area.
Right.
Yeah. So
as in you come into work, maybe you come in really early and you think I don't need a pass, but then it doesn't mean that you could freely leave.
Yeah. So that you have to look at that. And persons free to apply, and the information is on the link, on the information that you put on the screen.
Right. Oh boy, Carnival. Can you believe I have not gone to any fete and my voice sounds like this? What?
You have a virus going around.
Yeah, there's a virus going around. That's not stopping people, apparently. With regards to activities, though, first of all, and maybe this is not necessarily something that you should speak on, but I do find it interesting, the whole question of, well, we'll ban stuff in the Cricket Academy, but, you know, a state facility in Chaguamas is fine because less people will be affected. I mean, I don't know to what extent you could say to what degree the community in Carenage was affected, because it's not necessarily a small amount of people.
No. Well, based on the complaints we had, they seem to have been affected a lot because they were restricted from their movements so that party goers could have fun. So, you know, they spoke about, I think the business people came out and spoke about it affected their businesses and persons patronizing their businesses, and you know, the next time it happens, they'll be closing down and whatnot. So, but it would have affected the residents of Carenage and surrounding areas and whatnot. So,
does it seem like there's some communities that they're just kind of accustomed? You know, like to some extent, Carenage has seen things like this before. Woodbrook.
It's a regular thing in the Carenage area. However, it's very unfair to them if they have to experience this every week, every month, and whatnot. Even on a one-off occasion, because as you said, there might be elderly persons or persons who require medical attention and were not allowed to, you know, come out of that situation and seek their medical attention and whatnot.
Now, if my memory is correct, there were events the week before, and they weren't necessarily small events. Might not have been 17,000 people, but they weren't necessarily small events. They didn't seem to have the same issue with drunk driving and accidents. Last week, if my memory is correct in the reports, traffic more or less was able to be dispersed reasonably.
Well, it may have been dispersed quicker a lot more quicker than this situation over the weekend. So that would have been the difference. So yes, you have officers, but and moving the traffic and moving persons along. However, in this case, it seemed to be more difficult in having that done in a faster time.
Was the drunk driving just because of the scale, the number of people?
I think it was because of the scale. That is what I think. I'm not too sure. I wasn't part of the post-mortem for the event itself. So I wouldn't be able to say exactly what caused everything, except that what we observed was the linemen along the roadway, the stopping and the indiscriminate parking, persons coming out of their vehicle and partying, drunk drivers, and whatnot, and then pedestrians all over the streets. Persons who may not could have driven and left the area, and they were just lying on the ground, lying on the side of the roadway, causing even more traffic based on persons looking around.
I mean, this might seem obvious to some people, but it's honestly something that I didn't necessarily consider until now. I'm not going to these fetes. I didn't drive to Shagaramas and back. You know, I didn't go anywhere near there. But at the end of the day, people who go there, they're going home.
Yeah.
And if they're going home drunk, they're going to be on the same roads, potentially, that I'm going to be on.
Yeah, it's the same roads. One road in, one road out.
No, but like from, depending on where they're going, they might drive through Woodbrook. They might drive past the Oval. They might drive on the Savannah.
Yeah.
They might go down the highway.
To me, from my experience, it seems that any event that has in the West causes a lot of traffic. It does have a lot of traffic. It's just that the events before, the crowds dispersed a lot quicker than in this case.
Right.
And even having a boat cruise in the West causes a lot of traffic.
How wary should people be now, more than normal, with the level of drunk driving now?
Well, in terms of what? In terms of...
Is it that there are more people because of all of the activities? And
yeah, definitely.
Right?
Definitely. During the Christmas Carnival period, we have a lot more drunk driving. We have a lot more persons on the roadway who are inebriated, and they seem to be either on drug or drink. That seems to affect how they drive. Even being tired from attending the fete, they would cause an accident. So we have a lot more accidents because of that.
You just said something. I don't know why it surprised me, but you said drink or drugs.
Yeah.
Driving.
Yeah. So
it's just, that's another level that I never considered.
Yeah, because like me and my colleague were just speaking about the entire incident over the weekend, and we both recognize that from our era, we just had to worry about one particular drug, or maybe two.
Right.
Right. So you have the drinking and you have the consumption of alcohol, other drugs, and it was just one or two. But now, with the other drugs coming in, like tablets and ecstasy and pills and whatnot, it's a whole different level. So what the era we came from, where we experienced alcohol and maybe marijuana and other, and one maybe hard substance, now you have a lot more. And as we said before, we recognize a lot of young people experimenting with these drugs, like the pills.
I saw one party where people were drinking, cool, and walking past, you were smelling certain things.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the new normal now. This is TNT.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, until the legislators fix it, this is what it is. I don't know why I am then subsequently surprised. Because I'm not surprised, being tired. I understand that, right? Yeah. I have gone to my fair share of these things, and I remember one party, one fete in the Savannah. We basically slept in the car until we were ready to go.
Right. So
right?
You could do that. You could do that.
Right. We just had the fire officers knock to make sure we were okay and told us, hey, drop your window, because we didn't have the AC on, we didn't have the car running.
Right. So
safety.
Yeah. And if the sun is up, you could suffer some overheating and whatnot. And if it's early in the day, it might suffer some kind of...
Well, I mean, the flip side also is, I don't know how safe it is anymore. There was a report around 4 a.m. A group of 4 people were accosted by a gang of 8 individuals, and they got robbed of their personal items. I would imagine if you're out near French Street on 4 a.m. looking for food, probably you were drinking and partying. So, hey, I guess you were on foot, or at least you got in your car, you're looking to get something to eat.
Right, and criminals are opportunists. These are crimes of opportunity. So they would take advantage of your situation, especially if you're subjected to a drink or drug.
What do you, to what extent do you think it might be reasonable for me to tell people, hey, whatever safety measures you normally take years before, maybe consider going a step further,
of course.
both in fets, especially in the weekend, because you know some people, they're going to be going from Friday till Tuesday.
Yeah, from fet to fet. Yeah.
Right? But I know there are a lot of people who, I don't carry this, I don't carry that, I don't take my keys, you know, maybe you keep your phone. Now, I don't necessarily know if it's safe to not have your phone with you, right? But at the same time, first of all, not having your credit card, not having a Lynx card, not having certain other personal devices, that's not your phone. I don't know to what extent, you know, maybe there should be a secondary market for the old-fashioned
phones,
for the old-fashioned non-smartphones
that
you can put your SIM in.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
But then again, now you do want perhaps internet communication in case phone lines and texting lines get jammed up.
Yeah.
But perhaps, I'm just saying, you know, whatever your arrangements are for Carnival, and this is where the designated driver situation is potentially not just not to be safe when driving, but also the designated driver could be, I'll keep the phone or the two phones. Yeah. You know, there's 6 of us, we don't all need to carry our phones, but we'll have maybe more than one, but I'll keep them safe because I'm not drunk, so I'm not going to just, you know, it's not going to just fall out of my pocket or fall out of my hand somewhere.
Well, what we recommend as much as possible, yes, up the ante on the issue in sense of as much as possible, have as much cautionary measures put in place for your own safety and that of your friends and family and whoever you're lining up. We
have a call from San Fernando. I'll just say this. I think a lot of people are like, it's not that serious. Why gotta be taken so serious? It's like,
No, unless it happens to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
San Fernando on the line. Caller, good morning.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, ASPRO.
Good day.
Sean, I want to quickly talk about two things. Firstly, the Archbishop Gordon's issue with that toy that the band is giving in the bag. I am surprised that the Archbishop don't know that those things been around. The Archbishop need to go to the sex shop that they have in and around the country and protest there because those things are being sold for years in this country.
Yeah, that was a good point.
This same hoorah that the Archbishop is talking about, I saw this when you were a little boy, Sean. This same thing happened when when bikini and beads started to come out and people were in an uproar, even the church, as people were wearing these revealing clothes. I want to tell the Archbishop to want to get the government involved in regulation for these type of things. The Archbishop needs to come again. He needs to come again. That being said, Sean, I want to go quickly to the Sea Bridge and the Minister Julian John spewing untruths.
Okay.
She talked about when the Blue Wave Harmony, and I'm saying this out loudly, rammed the jetty in Tobago. It would seem to me that is some sort of mechanical issue that vessel had. That happened. There was no bad weather that she tried to cover it up with saying bad weather. And she said the same thing on that day to cover the issue when the Spirit couldn't dock in Tobago. The problem with the Spirit was not bad weather. The Spirit took in debris in the jets, and that is what caused the Spirit to have mechanical issues that prevented it from docking, not bad weather. So Ms. John has been a stranger to the truth on this issue. She's been a stranger to the truth. And Ms. Alfonso's interaction in this needs a lot to be desired. Ms. Alfonso was intimately involved in the bacchanal of the ferry service back in 2015, 2016. And Miss Alfonso is now a board member of of Paria. So Miss Alfonso needs to stay out of this. She really needs to stay out of this. It is time we have a proper, I can't understand why we don't have a proper car ferry running to Tobago. Firstly, we don't need a cargo ferry, as you said, Sean, that of that size. I want to say this, Ms. John said that the cargo ferry, that this Blue Wave Harmony is a bigger and better ferry than the Cabo Star. Okay, based on the IMO listing, it is a faster ferry. It's as capable of doing more speed. However, Sean, it is actually a smaller cargo ferry than the Cabo Star. The Cabo Star can accommodate 2,500 lane meters of space. 2,500 meters. This Blue Wave is 1,925 meters. So it is short by 575 lane meters of cargo space. The issue with the Spirit, Ms. John is trying to say about is ample cargo space that carries up to Tobago on the Spirit and the APT James and the other one. And forget what they call the one from China. Let me say this to Ms. John. Those vessels cannot accommodate because of the design of the hull. They cannot accommodate vessels beyond 7 tons. It's a design issue with the smaller ferries. Cargo to Tobago normally use the big cargo. They normally use 10-ton trucks and bigger, and they cannot go on those other ferries because they're going to damage the floor of the ferry because they're not designed for that.
Yeah.
They're not designed for that. Hence the reason why you need a big cargo ferry. And it is time trying to Tobago get a proper ferry, a proper cargo ferry to Tobago. Now, when we had the Cabo Star, on the last JSC that they had the inter-island ferry service people on, I talking about saying what they said because they manage the ferry service. You know what they said? They said the Cabo Star, at peak, the maximum amount of cargo the Cabo Star took to Tobago was 40% of the capacity of the Cabo Star. So if we're saying it's 2,500 lane meters, Sean, and 40% would be 1,000 meters. So it tells you that we don't need a ferry to carry that amount of cargo to Tobago. We could do it a smaller ferry that is reliable. I don't know why it is that the inter-island ferry service and the Port Authority seem not to be able to manage a cargo ferry service to Tobago on a long-term basis. We always have to be scrambling between two islands. Come on, man. It is time we get some proper management. And Ms. John is a stranger to the truth. Have a good day, gentlemen.
Thank you, caller. Well, I must admit, I didn't say that we didn't need a vessel of that size. But first of all, how it was reported, Blue Wave Harmony was said to have more capacity than the Cabo Star on a different measure than what you gave, right? In the sense of, I think it was talking about truckload units or something like that, right? But regardless, it seems as though both of them are greater capacity than needed. What's interesting is it was said that stakeholders wanted a bigger ferry. But the point is it didn't necessarily include analysis of actual usage and what the average level was, because you can't look at the extremes. You can't look at the outliers, especially if the outliers are very few and far between. So what is the actual average, right, the norm that you need sustained, and to what extent can you deal with the spikes with that sustained capacity? Can you do it comfortably? But you need the cargo ferry because when you look at some of the sand cargo and the like and some of the flatbed trucks where you're watching these low, long, big trailers with heavy stuff on it, yeah, that's going to be a bit too much. I'll reserve comments for the archbishops, the response to the archbishop, but also perhaps this is where two smaller boats would have been better, and it wasn't about capacity but just about reliability, and that ultimately is what it is. We need these situations to be more reliable and consistent. Yeah, why did it hit? Because, as I said, it's very unlikely to have bad weather there. And with regards to the Spirit, why are we getting the story if that's the case? Because, again, bad weather is unlikely. Someone has to kind of prove it to me for me to really 100% believe it. We do have another caller. I think it's Faizbad on the line.
Yeah, Sean, but with respect to the sorry.
Caller thought. Faizbad, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
And so, you know, with respect to the Reverend Jason Gordon, I think it is within his right as a leader of a certain section of the society to voice his opinion. You know, I think people just out of place to condemn him for that. He represents a certain cross-section, and if they feel strongly about that, this is what a democracy is all about. Yes? So I have no issue with that. Let me see if it gains traction or what direction it will take. Now he would have raised the conversation. I don't think the conversation is unworthy of raising. Secondly, I heard the gentleman saying Miss John is a stranger to the truth. Tell me something. Miss John relies on information that she would have gotten from the technical people on board the vessel. She's not there in person. She could only relate what is being related to her. Yes? And what she would have said, it sounds pretty reasonable to me. You see, we have a lot of marine engineers who just coming out there and blah blah in them out. Sofa engineers, I call them, you know. And so I would rubbish that thing that Miss John is a stranger to the truth. I think that is a very strong statement towards the minister, except that you can back it up on facts. Now, what would cause debris in the sea? When you have rough seas, you have a lot of children, and of course you would have debris from the bottom of the sea coming up. And I heard Miss John said that there was debris in the engines of the vessel. I heard her said that. Yes? With respect to Nairi Alfonso, she's one of the most qualified marine specialists in the country through insurance and marine representation, what have you. The boat that went back, that the PNM would have sent back, would have been the boat that was suited best and would have worked best. It cost cheaper and everything. And it worked best. And the PNM people sent back the vessel. Miss John is now trying to correct the wrong. You understand? So I don't know where these people coming from. It's just a kind of personal hate and vendetta because, you know, it's a UNC government doing it. I get that feeling. They are not very patriotic. They are not very patriotic at all. And I think Ms. John is making a very good effort to fix the wrong, my brother. Take care. Have a nice week.
Thank you, caller. Well, some people could say liking or disliking the UNC has nothing to do with patriotism because the UNC is not the country. With that said, I think one of the issues is, now maybe I put words in Ms. John's mouth that then Mr. Savannah spoke on, because you might be right with regards to how the TNT Spirit situation was reported, right? I was under the impression with how it was reported that it was a rough sea situation. Maybe that's Mr. Savannah's under a similar impression. Regardless, I believe we're under the impression, rightfully, that it was reported that the Blue Wave Harmony had a rough sea situation. The problem is this: you generally don't have ports where the rough seas occur within the ports. Rough seas outside the ports ain't gonna cause the ship to ram the port or to hit the port, right? Now, to what extent is the technical team telling the minister something that most likely won't be true? Because again, it's not as though we had a weather report to say that there were the weather in the bay. And to be fair, I wasn't necessarily clear about it when I initially spoke on it. But I did mention this. In the bay, it's not as simple for you to have rough seas. That's why you put the port there. So I think Mr. San Fernando, given the fact that when the government says certain things, it's not as though they're giving us fully detailed information. I can't remember what my commentary on Nari Alfonso was when this all happened, however many years ago. And I was willing to take what she said at face value. But to be honest, I have no reason to think she's more qualified than Mr. San Fernando based on what I know of his background. Not his, I read some Wikipedia entry, so I think I know how shipping goes. His, I have gone on maritime projects, so I know how shipping goes, right, on top of other things. So given the fact that I kind of know ports ain't going to have rough weather just so. So it's not like anybody reported on this rough weather. I can't fault him for his opinions on the matter, right? With regards to his commentary on what the minister had to say. Because if she's saying something that can be, because maybe someone will go into the meteorological reports and prove that it's untrue. Like, if it's debris, then it's not rough weather. Yes, those two things could be interrelated, but generally speaking, there's debris all over the port of Port of Spain. Don't seem to have these problems that often. So what was different? And at the end of the day, the minister's not really being specific in what she's saying. And I think that's why Mr. Sanfana has an issue with it. But don't take my word for it. He's back on the line. Caller, good morning. You on here?
Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
And I don't need thanks, but I don't need you to defend me. I want to say this. The reason I said firstly that Miss John is a stranger to the truth. I listened when the first issue with the spirit happened.
Yeah.
I listened to Miss John on the Tobago Updates channel saying that it wasn't, the issue was bad weather. I listened to Miss John say that. However, what came out of it is that the spirit had an issue with debris in the intake. That is what happened. So Miss John coming out, and it was the same day that the blue wave harmony hit the jetty.
Yeah, generally, yes.
And I am saying this: the fact that the size of the rip along the side of the vessel, showing the damage along the side of that vessel, a 30-foot gash. Anybody who understands shipping and who in the marine industry and who are accustomed docking vessels and who are accustomed to have docked vessels in Tobago, Mr. Faizabad, could understand what happened there and know that that vessel had a mechanical issue why that happened. That is a mechanical issue. That's not an easy lash, you know, an easy hit when the vessel comes alongside. That is a vessel that lost control of some one of the systems. The propulsion system, there's a malfunction on there's so many issues that could happen right there for that to ram and cause that big gash on the vessel.
I think not limited only to purely mechanical.
Let them make the report. I would like them to make the report public. After the investigation, make the report public and then chastise me.
Yeah.
That is what I want. Let them make the report public and then chastise me. And I maintain Miss John is a stranger to the truth. Miss John has plenty experience. So for her to come and try to put spin, which is what these politicians do. And I want to tell him this. I love no party in this country. I just love Trinidad and Tobago. I was the one that was trying to have a spoil the ballot campaign for people to vote for none of them. Not the PNM and not the UNC. I was the one that was trying to do that in Trinidad and Tobago. So, rock so. Have a good day.
Thank you, Paula. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. It's not that he's unpatriotic. He has issues with both sides. There's nothing special about the UNC. He doesn't particularly hate the UNC because of the UNC. He just has issues with how the country is being governed in general. And as someone who at times finds himself in a similar situation, I can appreciate that. Because people want to say, why do I hate the UNC so much? Hey, I have people tell me why did I hate the PNM so much when the PNM were in office. So maybe I'm the one being consistent and the other people are the ones being biased or inconsistent. Just say it. Now, we have to go on to the line. I still have yet to get to, because I have a good example to give on this Archbishop's issue.
I have a caution with respect to that as
well. But we don't have to go on to the line. Caller, good morning, you're on here.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, officer.
Yeah, good day.
I have a real issue with the TTPS and their communications with respect to what their media ambassadors are doing.
Yeah.
And I want to reflect on the TTPS program on another network beyond the tape. Now we have a crisis in the police service with respect to transparency, accountability, and confidence. And here, a couple of media ambassadors who serves on the executive of the second TTP WSA. This main function, as I see it, and they have always said it, is to represent the personnel within the police service, the majority of police officers.
Yeah, the second division.
Once you have those people wearing those caps, there is a perceived bias of how they will represent the TTPS with respect to what the TTPS wants. The TTPS at this point must and are looking for our support, and they are not given us that ability by choosing those people. For example, the president of the second division, about three months ago, sometime last year, he gave advice to the leadership of the police who was responsible for promotion, and the judgment said that was poor. The second division had a major role to play. We all know how they are policing, and they were found wanting. So how can I trust the information coming out of his mouth when he is representing some of the officers who are under a microscope in respect to what has happened in Bassey Street? I say no more. I say that the TTPS communication people have to look at that. I go and have a nice morning.
Thank you, caller. Well, ironically, then senior superintendent, I can't remember exactly what his rank was, Roger Alexander, was removed from Beyond the Tape because his communication was not in line with the executive. That's my perception of what happened at the time, and it turned into a thing. So now, I guess, I don't know, I do find that the union was in line with the commissioner's initial message, and I didn't necessarily like that, because as far as I'm aware, not speaking for the media ambassadors or anyone on this show, for those that are not on this show, the officers did not necessarily have a great response in agreement with the commissioner, right? Including retired officers, retired senior officers. We have Movan and Faizabad. We have to be fast because we're out of time. We'll take Movan first. If Faizabad might have to be a little bit shorter because of time, I apologize. If you think it's unfair, you can call in tomorrow, but we are out of time. Movan, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Morning.
First of all, I have to just I have to compliment Mr. San Fernando for that that statement he made last week about at what stage of the training in the police service do people are people given the Balizé juice to drink. That is a serious statement. That is a comprehensive statement. Sean, I don't even think at your age that you fully understand the significance of that statement. And I really would like to have a discussion, personal discussion with Mr. San Fernando to expand on it, or hopefully that he can expand on it sometime, because that would take us into a deep, deep space, Sean. Secondly, I again support Mr. De Martin, because I am one who also believes that the police service needs to be reorganized. I am reading too often in the newspapers about too many cases that are falling apart at the courts because of police incompetence, maybe corrupt behavior, maybe just ignorance. I don't know how to put it on. And I will tell you, Sean, I will never stop blaming the police for this noise situation. And it is also connected to that statement about the drinking of the Balizé juice, because I am very much aware of that particular administration doesn't want to deal with the noise pollution. People who have sense could figure out why. And I'm saying that failure was encouraged by the police, or the police was encouraged by that. So it works both ways, and that is why we find ourselves in a situation we have today. They can make all the excuses they want, but I blame both of them.
I'll have to end it
Yes,
there.
okay, it's all right. Come on.
Thank you. I won't respond to your speech. I'll just say this. I think, like the Archbishop, you might be misidentifying the problem. Not to say that there isn't political interference, but I do believe that you are maybe judging the entire service what might be a minority. However, the minority seems very significant because I would suspect that part of that minority that does drink P&M juice includes people at the higher echelons of the service. And I will leave that there. I will leave that there, right? But I think the rank and file don't, right? But then, and why I say misidentify, there's also the consideration of, well, some, you know, when you have elected officials, to what extent does the police service treat them differently? Not because of their party affiliation, but just because, it's an elected official, whoever the elected official is. I think it's Faisal back on the line.
Yes. Morning again, Sean.
Has to be quick.
Sean, it's kind of ironic that you had debris turning up and that accident in Tobago on the same day. So it tells you something that, I mean, I've been in the marine industry for the past 22 years. Well, since 2018, I would have stopped. But, you know, there is a likelihood that those two things happening on the same day, rough seas could have contributed. And I'm saying the captain of that vessel that berthed in Tobago, because he's unfamiliar with the environment, I think it might have been a captain error. I hear everybody blaming systems failure. But I am also considering it could have been human error. Yes?
I mean, it's not a very fast way to no longer be a captain if you're going to make a human error like that. Caller, thank you for being quick. I understand where you're coming from. It's just that there's debris in the port of Port of Spain. I have been on the ferry. I have looked and seen the garbage in the ocean floating. So there needs to be a little bit more detail for me to reconcile this. Also, I have done the Tobago passenger ferry run far more often than I'd like to admit. I'm not sure if I have experienced rough seas in the ports. And that's the key thing, in either port. So I'm surprised if you have that experience. Have you ever seen seas that rough for a boat to go out of control to that extent? Now, I don't know, you said you had a warning with regards to the...
Yeah, so without getting into the context of which the Archbishop was speaking, in terms of the item that they gave out,
yes,
we all know what it is about. One. Two, then you have the mixture of drink and drug. What are they going to do with it?
Right. Well, I assume they're not going to take it with them on the road.
Right. You would assume
I
that,
would hope
Sean.
that.
You would
I would
assume
really
that.
hope that.
But I have been involved in working in Carnival for 20-something years, and I've seen a lot of things that shouldn't happen on the roadway. And I would, as a TTPS officer, as the TTPS, what are we going to do when we are faced with people who have drink and drug in their system and utilize this object on the government road? What are we going to do?
In public.
In public.
Potentially in broad daylight.
So the question is, members of the public are reminded that there's an accepted behavior with respect to Carnival. So yes, you could drink, but if you attack somebody, you will be charged for wounding and assault and whatnot. And in the same breath, if you use something in the public domain that shouldn't be used, you may find yourself susceptible to being charged for something.
So
that's saying.
The long and short is, folks, there is no good reason to have a sex toy with you out in public. There's none.
No, it's not illegal to possess it.
I know, but I'm saying there's
saying?
no, listen, there's no practical reason why you would want to have it on your possession in public. Unless you're transiting from one location to another.
The police is not going to arrest you for having it in your possession.
But if you're naked and you're in the process of using it, whether it's on yourself or somebody else,
yes, you would.
You could run afoul of the law.
Yeah.
Now, with that said, I'll end with this. It's funny how I will find these anecdotes randomly by what I've recently seen on the internet. I recently saw something.
Yeah.
This was not about this issue. I don't know if the algorithm kind of like indirectly put it my way because this was an issue geographically.
Yeah.
But apparently, with regards to music, when the gramophone was invented, we ain't talking about cassette player, gramophone. We're talking the first.
The initial,
yeah. I think it's a wind-up mechanical thing using a record to reproduce music, right?
Yeah.
Reproduce song. The fear was people would waste away listening to music by themselves, right? And and I think the example was not so much with regards to lewd or violent behavior, but just look at this new thing that is beyond the norms of society. People will waste away, right? Like what they said about television, and then what they say now about personal devices and the internet, right? And of course, that has its similarities with when rock music came out, it's the music of the devil. Then when rap music came out, it's the music of the devil. One could argue, I'm surprised no one has said chutney soca and soca not the music of the devil, because half of what soca is wine and jam, and half of what, if not most of what chutney soca is, rum is my lover and give me rum, right? Not the kind of things that a religious body should be putting out there. But perhaps on some level, we should maybe consider to what extent is society changing. Maybe we like the change, maybe we don't like the change. It is a legitimate question to ask whether it's a good change or not. That's fine. But I think the problem is when you look at a situation and you want to ascribe a very specific solution, that usually is not a good idea. Case in point, there was the Las Vegas shooting, mass shooting years ago. And some of my friends were like, this is terrorism because it invoked terror. And I'm like, no, it's not terrorism. Because this looked like one nut job that just had a lot of guns and wanted to shoot people. And if you say terrorism, that brings a whole different level of response. That's going to send law enforcement down a wild goose chase. That's not going to matter because this seems like a homicidal maniac, not someone with a political message. You want to ascribe the wrong solution to something, you could cause more harm than good. So I have no issue if the Archbishop went to question, should things like this be allowed in our society? But to say that it unequivocally should not be allowed and the law should intervene, the government should intervene, that's a little bit different. Because what is he could point out that it is against his values, but his values are not automatically shared by other people who do not share his faith. So at the end of the day, how far could that be the basis of our argument upon which we will determine the laws and regulations of the wider society? And I say this as a Catholic, because as I said, and I will end where I, not so much open, but where I began on this issue, I believe in freedom of religion to the point where if I have to, I will stand against my own religion to ensure that everyone can freely practice whatever they believe in, so long as it does not hurt themselves or anybody else. Because that is the thing that guarantees me to believe whatever it is that I choose to believe, whether it is my current religion or if I just decide to change religions. It guarantees the Archbishop, it protects his right to practice his faith and lead his flock. And anything that can impinge on that must be looked at with scrutiny. And the imposition of a certain position upon others that is based on a religious perspective is one of those things, because it's the backlash that will do us in. And the backlash will be deserved if we go too far. Have the conversation on, has society become too loose, too lewd, too rambunctious?
Suggestive.
I think it's beyond suggestive at this point, right? But that's a different to saying government should intervene and stop this. It's a far cry. Because at the end of the day, the Archbishop, you know what? Where's all of this strong opinions on some of the more everyday issues that actually do harm to our society? I do feel as those religious issues tend to be skewed to one specific corner of the social debate. And at times, I would argue it's not the most pressing concern that I have on my plate. So with that said, thanks to the callers. I don't think we have any comments today. Thanks, ASP Room, for joining us. Thanks for agreeing to reschedule. My voice was even worse yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Right? So that was one of the reasons why we couldn't do the show yesterday. Folks, this is Talking About WESN, reminding you to stay safe, have a good day, don't speed, get a designated driver, don't drink and drive, please be responsible. In my opinion, never do hard drugs, right? And be careful with the weed smoking. I understand now is the time to free up. Don't put yourself in danger unnecessarily because you're being a little too reckless with your own safety. This is 2026. times are different now, and the extent that we're going to have a good time, maybe it is going too far. But you know what? I'm not concerned about sex toys. I'm concerned about hard drugs and the operating of heavy machinery that we call automobiles that can be dangerous to the bodily health of each other. Be nice. We will see each other tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN